I'll just pause it. So yeah, great to see you all here today. So thanks very much for those of you who've been able to join us. For those of you who haven't been able to join us, I hope you find this information session helpful anyway. And I'm always available at different times during this whole Colombo Plan process. So don't feel that this is the only opportunity to find out information about the scholarship and about the process. But before we kick off, I just would like to give a small acknowledgement of country. I'm joining you here from Wiradjuri country, which is in Bathurst, or Bathurst is in Wiradjuri country. But I know we've got other members of the meeting here from different nations as well. So I'd just like to acknowledge those traditional custodians from the lands on which you're all joining us today as well. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of our First Nations people and their ongoing connections to the land and waters of New South Wales. So you've all come here today to find out about the new Colombo Plan, so that's really great. Some of you might not have heard about the new Colombo Plan before today, so hopefully we'll be able to fill you in as much as possible. You might walk away from this session also with more questions afterwards, which is fine and perfectly understandable as well. So again, we're here throughout the whole new Colombo Plan journey for you. But one of the first questions a lot of people have is, what is this new Colombo Plan? So essentially, it's an initiative of the Australian government. It's administered by DFAT, and their plan there is to lift our knowledge of the Indo Pacific and vice versa. So our part that we play in that is supporting Australian undergraduate students to undertake internships, study and language tuition in that region. So this is so that we can enable a two-way flow of students between Australia and the rest of the region, and it complements the thousands of students coming from the region to study in Australia each year. So we want that flow outwards as well. It's intended to be transformational, and it's on a personal level that it will do that, but it's also through deepening Australia's relationships with the region through expanding university ties, business ties and other links. So we want you, and the Australian government wants you to study and get work-based experiences in the Indo Pacific, and for it to become a rite of passage for Australian undergraduate students. So yeah, this is a really great opportunity for our students. Dylan Mail is joining us today as well. He was able to undertake the experience and take advantage of all the other opportunities that have come from the new Colombo Plan. So he'll be speaking about his experience and the outcomes for him a little bit later as well. But there's also a new Colombo Plan website if you want more information, and guidelines and etc. will be put up there in the next few weeks as they're released by the government. So the Indo-Pacific, it's a broad region, so it's about 40 locations across the region that you can study, from South Asia to the Cook Islands to Nepal. Yeah, there's a host of locations which can be somewhat overwhelming for students when they're looking at somewhere to study, but it just gives you a lot of choice as well. So you can see there, I won't read them all out, but yeah, a whole lot of host locations where you can potentially study in 2022. What you study overseas is basically dependent on what your degree will allow you to do. So one of the next steps after we finish the session today is get in touch with your course director, to make sure that your course is one of those ones that is eligible for students to study overseas, but then to find out what sort of subjects you can study overseas as well. So essentially you can study 1 or 2 sessions of your degree abroad. So that's either a semester or a session. And you can also undertake an internship while you're over there, and you can undertake language tuition as well before you start your study. So your host university can be one of Sturt University's existing exchange partners. We have about half a dozen in that region. So it is a little bit limited, we understand that. So the other option is that you can study at any other university in the Indo-Pacific region as a study abroad student, if that's a better match for your need. And we can talk about sort of what study abroad and what exchange is later on as well. You will be studying full-time while you're on your overseas study experience, and those subjects should match your normal load that you would be doing at Sturt University. If you're an online student or a part-time student, you will have to increase your study load for that period to become a full-time student, but that has the advantage of actually accelerating you through your degree for a small portion of that time you're away. So that's actually an advantage for DE or online students rather than a disadvantage. The language tuition component is taken in country, so you can't undertake it before you leave the country, although you can undertake your own study, but the course itself, you take it in country, and normally probably makes sense that you take it prior to the start of your academic study period. It's not designed to make you fluent in the language so that you study in the language of your host institution, because you will study at your host in English, but it's designed to make you fluent enough so that you can start engaging and immersing yourself in a really valuable way in your host location. And your internship, that can be undertaken before, during, or after your academic study period. And I think you can probably undertake more than one internship with this program as well. And I think that's what Dylan did during his experience. I'm just going to keep going through the slides. I'll stop and let you ask questions once we've finished, if that's okay. So if you do have any questions, feel free to write them down or pop them in the chat, and we'll go over them when we finished. So there are various students who can or can't apply for the scholarship. We are after students who are really enthusiastic about their studies, are curious and passionate about the world around them, and want to make the most of this opportunity that's available. So you know, it's about someone who not only seeks adventure, but seeks to find out and learn about other people and about themselves as well. But on top of that, there are eligibility criteria that you must meet. The eligibility criteria here is based on the 2021 criteria. The new Colombo Plan has not released the details of the 2022 eligibility criteria, but we're assuming that very little is going to change about it. The only thing that has changed is the age criteria, and I've already updated that here, so that's all you need to worry about really. But I'll just go into each one in a bit more detail, because some of it might bamboozle you a little bit. So initially, you have to be nominated for the NCP scholarship program by your home university. So that's by Sturt University. So to get to that stage, there is a pre-nomination stage, which we will get you to go through. And that is where you'll answer a number of questions on a nomination form for Sturt Global that you'll send back to us. And then of those nominations that we receive, we choose up to 10 of those students to go through to the formal application process, which is an online application and then an interview stage. Our nomination form and the online application form are pretty much a mirror of each other. We've designed it to give you the nomination form with the same questions so that you can start thinking about it and start preparing for it using your own research. But then if you get nominated to go to the online application stage, that's where we step in. We start helping you refine your application, work with you intensively one-on-one to make sure that you're putting forward a really strong application that we're confident will get you through to the next interview stage. You have to be an Australian citizen, so that's pretty self-explanatory there. But with that, you cannot be a citizen or permanent resident of your proposed primary location or secondary location. So what that means is part of your scholarship allows you to study in one location and take an internship in another location. If you have dual citizenship in either of those locations, you're not eligible to receive the scholarship. So for example, if I'm a UK resident, not that that's in the Indo Pacific, but if that was, I wouldn't be allowed to go and study in the UK. So if I've got Japanese citizenship as well, I can't go back and study in Japan. That's probably a better example to use. You have to be enrolled in an undertaking until the completion of your study components, at least a bachelor degree or a bachelor honours degree. And you have to be taking that at an onshore campus of an Australian university. Sturt University doesn't have an offshore campus, so you don't need to worry about that. And basically the rest of it means that you have to be enrolled in your degree and still studying while you're undertaking your scholarship. You have to be aged between 18 and 30 years of age if you're a non-Indigenous applicant, or between 18 and 35 years of age for Indigenous applicants. And that age, the cut-off age, is as of January 1, 2022. So if you're turning 35 or 30 in April or November in 2022, you're still eligible. You have to have received a minimum percentage of 70% grades at your university at the time of applying. At Sturt University, we don't use percentages like that, so we've equated that to the equivalent of a credit average or a grade point average of 5. So with the email that you have all, or most of you, I think, have received, if you found out about this opportunity, we've already pulled out those high academic achieving students. So I'm pretty confident that you're all at that already. And I think probably most of you are above that. So that's really great. You can't have received an NCP scholarship before. So that means someone like Dylan, who received his scholarship in 2019, can't get a scholarship again. And you can't be an employee of the branch of DFAT that administers NCP. So if any of you work for DFAT, that unfortunately takes you out of the running as well. The other big question that students have is what exactly will the scholarship cover? You've probably noticed in the email and all the information that you've seen around the NCP scholarship is that we don't put a figure on it. It's because it does vary from student to student, but essentially you'll be almost completely fully covered for your expenses while you're overseas. So it covers your flights to get to your host location. It covers your accommodation at your host location. If you have to pay tuition fees to your host university, it will cover that. It will cover your language training while you're in country. I think it gives you a weekly or monthly stipend, which is like a living allowance while you're over there, an establishment allowance to help you set up once you get there. It's a mental health allowance. So that's all in the form of sort of funding money. And then there's also other benefits, which are insurance. So they give that to you for free, essentially. You get a case manager to look after you all the way through Scope Global, who will be looking after scholars while they're on the program, as well as you've always got Sturt University staff as well to help you out. And there's private sector sponsorship. So some scholars might receive an extra bursary if private sector is contributing to their scholarship as well. So next is the application process. So this can be a little bit daunting for a student, and should warn you now that it can be a long process as well. So it all kicks off in July. So the nomination form that I referred to earlier will get you to complete that by early July. I'll just have the disclaimer, I don't have specific dates up here, I'm sorry, because again, we're still waiting for them to come out from the new Colombo Plan Secretariat. As soon as we do have specific dates, I'll put them up and I'll update them for everyone to let you know. But at the moment, I can only work in general terms. So early July, you'll be required to complete a nomination form and return it to Sturt Global. Then mid-July, you'll be advised if you're successful in getting to the next online application stage. That application portal will be open until, I think they said, the 30th of August. So I'm just trying to find an email here that gave some updates. So yes, so the online applications for those successful students will be open until the 30th of August. Then the successful nominees from that application process will be asked to attend an interview. Those interviews are normally held in September through to October. They have traditionally been in person. Last year, because of COVID, the interviews were via telephone or Zoom as well. So I'm not sure how they're going to manage that this year. But yeah, through September, October, they interview the students. November, they notify the successful and unsuccessful students as to whether they are going to go on and be scholars. We announced that in December, and hopefully we'll be back to having face-to-face award ceremonies, but if not, we hold them online, and that's through DFAT. And then January 2022, all going well, you'll be able to commence your study period. But we're expecting that study period is actually not going to be able to commence, realistically speaking, until mid-2022, based on information that's coming out from the federal government at the moment. So when you're looking at your study plan, you should probably expect to be going away from session 2 in your CSU degree rather than session 1. There's a number of criteria that students are asked to address throughout the application process. So again, I mentioned the nomination form and the application form being sort of mirror images of each other, because these are traditionally the questions that they put to students in the application form, and they're what we get you to address in the nomination form as well. So they all have the same weighting value, so they're all ranked exactly the same, and every student has to answer each question. In our nomination form, we give you a word limit of about 300, and I think that's very similar to what the online application form gives you as well. So I'll just go into each point in a small amount of detail. At the nomination stage, we don't give you too much coaching or assistance with how to answer these questions, because we want them to really the answers to come straight from you yourself. But once you get to the next stage, we certainly help you very intensively to go through them and refine that, and coaching and, you know, grammar checking and spell checking and all those sorts of things. So number 1 is academic excellence. So the government wants to send away their brightest students. So they're asking you at that stage to explain any academic achievements that you've had in the last probably 12 months or so. They're not that interested in school achievements, but they're more interested in tertiary, so that higher level academic excellence. So it's not just about your GPA, it could be awards that you've received through the studies at the university. It could be that, you know, you are excelling in specific areas of your degree. It could be also mentioning the strategies and the skills and the techniques that you use to maintain that academic excellence as well. The next question is about leadership and engagement in the community. So what do you do outside of your academic learning that puts you in front of people to show your leadership and engagement? So it can be working in volunteer groups, it can be in sporting clubs, it can be in university clubs. You know, you might be a treasurer of your local sporting group, you might be president of the student association, you could volunteer down at the local community centre working with vulnerable children or other types of community members. So it's just about explaining not only that you have that role, but how you stand forward as a leader within that role, how you help others and how you mentor others, and how you show that engagement with the community around you. So again, it's not just the community that you live in, but it can be broader as well. It can be your student community, your volunteer group community, or the town or the city that you live in as well. Number 3 is adaptability and resilience. So when you go overseas, I don't know how many of you have travelled before, or some of you might not have travelled, but when you are experiencing new things, you no doubt come across some challenges along the way. And this question is designed to find out how you face those challenges, how you adapt, and how you grow from those. So again, looking back at what techniques you might have used to overcome anything that you've faced as far as adversity goes in your life, and how you've become a stronger person from that. So one example might be COVID. So we've all had to change our lifestyles and our ways of thinking and working throughout COVID. So we've all, you know, gone through our own stresses as well. So it's making sure that we're looking after our well-being, the well-being of others, but also whilst going about our day-to-day business. So how have you adapted to that situation? How have you flipped it around to make it a positive experience? And how are you still working through that and growing from that? So you can use your own examples there. That's just one, but you can use something else in your life. You can get as personal as you like about that. So I appreciate that some people might have had some major obstacles to overcome. It's up to you how much you want to give out to others, but so that's a personal thing for you there. And the 4th one is about the ability to contribute to the NCP strategic objectives and goals. I think even though those other ones might sound a bit hard to answer, this one stumps people a lot of the time as well, namely because it's very new to people when they come into this program about what the NCP is it. So it's hard for people to go, oh, okay, well, I don't even know how to address this question. So the key answer there is make sure you read the guidelines once they're published, and as soon as they are, I'll certainly let you all know. And that does go into the objectives. So it's about building relationships, building networks, sharing your lifestyle with others, and bringing the knowledge that you learn overseas back to Australia, but also sharing your knowledge with communities overseas as well. So that can be at a very personal level, making friends at university, getting involved with communities that you're going to be living with. It can be at a higher level when it comes into your internships, about sharing and networking, and it can be at an institutional level. You want to promote the NCP to other students whilst you're overseas, but when you come back from your program as well, you might want to become a New Colombo Plan ambassador like Dylan, and help other students find out about the New Colombo Plan program. So they're just some tips there to answer it. In addition, once you get to the online application process, you'll have to provide 1 or 2 references. It does change from year to year. At least one of those references will have to be an academic reference. So most students will choose a Sturt University academic to be a referee for them. If you're not long into your study with CSU and you've perhaps come from another university or even from TAFE, you can look at other external references, but they should be quite recent rather than high school or 3 years ago or anything like that. Online students sometimes face the difficulty that they're not face-to-face in classes with their lecturers all the time, so they feel that that can be a bit of an obstacle, but you'll be surprised to know that your academics really do know a lot about you, and the referees are asked basically to also address how you meet these 4 criteria as well. So, you know, academic excellence is probably the easiest ones for academics to address, but leadership and engagement, that can be about your engagement in your subjects, adaptability and resilience, how you've managed to work as an online student while you're juggling work and meeting deadlines and time management and so on, and ability to contribute to the NCP objectives. That's probably a matter of you talking to them, sharing the objectives with them, and even outlining to them how you plan to meet them as well. You'll also have to undergo a police check. Every student who applies for the scholarship has to do this. This is mainly for visa purposes. So a lot of the countries that you could be hosted through require students to have a police check in order to get a student visa. So they like to get that process out of the way before they award the scholarship, so they know that they're not awarding a scholarship to someone who's not going to be able to get a visa. If you have an adverse police check, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be eligible to receive the scholarship, but that will be considered on a case-by-case basis. So if that's happened to you, don't rule yourself out of the running just yet. You can have a private conversation with me, or you can just put it out there to the NCP and they'll be able to answer some questions as well. So yeah, you don't have to feel that that's an obstacle that's going to automatically exclude you from the program. So now it's my turn to stop talking for a little while. I'll be relieved to do that. And I'm going to hand over to Dylan.
Thanks for that, Alice. I'll just try to share my screen. Sorry about that. It's just not coming
That's
up.
all right. I can keep sharing if you want to tell me when to click through.
Yeah, that might. Oh wait. Got it.
You're back.
I just had to. There we go.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, hey everyone. It's great to be with you all today. A little introduction to me. I was the 2019 New Colombo Plan scholar to Papua New Guinea, with the added success of being named fellow. So it wasn't too long ago when I was in the same situation as you all, having just received an email saying that I was eligible to apply for the New Colombo Plan. At that time, I didn't know much about what the New Colombo Plan was, but I knew that studying abroad was always something that I wanted to do. So I thought it was a great opportunity. Since returning from my program, I've been a New Colombo Plan alumni ambassador, which has been awesome. So today I'm just going to talk to you a bit about why you should apply for a New Colombo Plan Scholarship. I'll share my program and what I experienced with you all to give you an insight of what you could do. So I'll talk about my study component, my internship components, and then I'll talk a bit about what happens when you come back from your New Colombo Plan program and what opportunities there are. So I guess firstly, why would you apply for a New Colombo Plan scholarship? It's really a great scholarship which supports Australian undergraduate students to study abroad. So if you've ever considered studying abroad, it's a great mechanism to allow that to happen, and you have great support. It allows you to develop professionally and personally and gain skills that set you apart from the rest. So even from now, just going through the application process, you're already developing a lot of skills about applying for things. When you start to plan your program, you'll be liaising with host universities, with Sturt University, and perhaps trying to organise some internships. So there's a whole lot of skills that you gain from that. And then, of course, when you get to go out and go to country, you really get to immerse yourself through studying at another university, meeting a lot of other people and throwing yourself into a new environment. You really develop a whole range of skills, cross-cultural skills, and knowledge of a new place. While you're in country, you'll also develop established enduring networks. So with your classmates, with people you might do an internship with. And this is a really big part of the NCP, is really establishing and meeting people, really building those people-to-people links between Australia and the Indo Pacific region. And also just meeting other NCP scholars, you build a great sense of community and develop some great friendships as well. While you're in country, you'll experience new cultures. Through the language training, you'll be able to learn new languages and, like I said, gain new perspectives. You'll be able to contribute towards building stronger relationship between Australia and our region through studying in the region, interning, doing language training, all that. You actually become pretty much like a soft diplomat for Australia. You're like an ambassador for Australia, which is something that you don't really always consider at this stage of the New Colombo Plan journey, but you really realise that as you undertake your program. Just for the means of undertaking a New Colombo Plan scholarship, it opens up windows and opportunities you otherwise would not have known existed. Here's just a couple of photos from the New Colombo Plan award ceremony. So pre-COVID, New Colombo Plan scholars would travel to Canberra to conduct their interviews and then also return if they were successful to go to the award ceremony. And it's just a great opportunity. So I hope that gets to happen for the next round, but if it doesn't, that's okay. But here I got to meet Maurice Payne, who's the foreign minister. In the centre there, Julie Bishop, who was the former foreign affairs minister, who was actually the founder of the New Colombo Plan. And then on the right there is me with the Governor General and his wife. And there's just a photo of all the 2019 New Colombo Plan scholars, just all excited. You can see in the photo, full of excitement, getting ready to embark on our programs, and me with the Papua New Guinea flag. So a bit about my study component. I was studying a Bachelor of Agricultural Science degree at the time when I was applying for a New Colombo Plan scholarship, and I had one more year left of my degree, and I wasn't sure whether I was going to do placement or honours in my final year. There was 2 options for my course. I couldn't undertake a New Colombo Plan Scholarship if I was doing placements, so that kind of leaned me into doing my honours. So I actually did my honours research as my study component, as well as enrolling in a couple of classes with the university at the Papua New Guinea University of Technology. While I was there, I also did some language training as well. So just show you a few photos. That's just the front gate of the university in Leh. Some of my classmates, we went on a week-long field trip to the Highlands region. Yeah, that was a fantastic opportunity to see a lot of Papua New Guinea and build bonds with my classmates as we travelled through the Highlands there. And that was just nearing the end of my semester. And yeah, the friendships you gain from doing a semester exchange are like really unique. Everyone is very welcoming and friendly. And I know at first I wasn't sure how many friends I would make or whether it'd be lonely in that, but yeah, it's really great opportunity to make friends and everyone's awesome. This is just on Independence Day. That was a great day celebrating independence of Papua New Guinea and the cultures and diversity in the country. I did 2 internships for my internship component. So like Alice mentioned, you're not limited to just one internship. And also your internship doesn't have to be in your host location. So for example, I went to Papua New Guinea. I didn't have to do internships in PNG if I didn't want to, but I did. But I also did an internship in Solomon Islands with the Australian High Commission. So I started in Papua New Guinea, I did an internship with Wafu Golpu Joint Venture attached to Newcrest Mining. Some NCP scholars get the opportunity to be sponsored by the private sector. So there's a whole heap of private sector organisations operating across the Indo Pacific who have partnered with the New Colombo Plan to sponsor scholars. And that just pretty much provides extra support to scholars to undertake internships and engage with the region. So yeah, I was really fortunate to be sponsored by Newcrest Mining and do my internship there. Through the middle here, you can see I got to get out in the field quite a bit. As an agricultural student, I did some cool little projects in that internship, learning about cocoa, all the different foods that the farmers grow over there. So yeah, it was really immersive experience. Photo on the right there was in Solomon Islands. Through my internship with Australian High Commission, I learned a lot about the Australian aid program. And yeah, that's just standing in front of a new kindergarten classroom that Australia helped fund. One of the best things about the New Colombo Plan is being able to immerse yourself in the culture really and go to a place you haven't been before and just yeah, be open to learning. So I was fortunate to do a lot of travel. On the left there was a village I visited for a few days. One of my colleagues from my internship took me up, got to get a good insight into how they live. In the middle is just for some traditional dress of one of the cultures up in the Highlands region of PNG. Super beautiful. And I guess when I was there, I had one other New Colombo Plan scholar went to Papua New Guinea the same time I was there. So you'll find that whatever host location you go to, usually there'll be another New Colombo Plan scholar that will be there as well. Not necessarily, but yeah, I was fortunate to have Hannah Brimstone, the 2019 scholar there, and we got to meet up a couple of times and got to share some amazing experiences and all that. So that was really cool. And just, yeah, the beautiful landscapes. I guess Indo Pacific's pretty unique. There's a lot of beautiful landscapes, a lot of tropical areas, tropical islands, is a volcano on the right here that I got to go and visit, which is really cool. Yeah, so it's not always fully academic and work and all that. You do get the opportunities to travel and experience the country that you'll be living in. And I guess when you finish your NCP scholarship, it's just an important thing to note that there's a lot of opportunities when you return to continue supporting the objectives of the New Colombo Plan. So one such example is the alumni program, which the New Colombo Plan run. The NCP supports alumni to maintain connection to each other, the program in the Indo Pacific as they progress through the rest of their lives and careers. You'll have access to exclusive networking events, professional development and mentoring opportunities. You'll be connected to well connected to businesses who work in the Indo Pacific region, from just going and studying and working in the region, but also the New Colombo Plan have a whole portal of connections. And there's the active alumni ambassadors program. So when you return, you'll have the opportunity to apply to become a New Colombo Plan alumni ambassador if that was something you might like to do and are eligible for. And you get to just support your university in encouraging other students to participate in New Colombo Plan experience. So just some opportunities I've had since coming back. I was invited to speak at Parliament House at the 2020 New Colombo Plan New Colombo Plan award ceremony as an alumni ambassador. That was a great opportunity. So I guess to improve my public speaking and things like that. That was awesome. And more recently in Melbourne, we had a networking event which brought together New Colombo Plan alumni, Australia Awards alumni, and Australian Volunteers alumni. So pretty much 3 of Australia's big key programs. So New Colombo Plan sends Australian students out into the region. Australia Awards is where people from the region come to Australia to study. And then Australian Volunteers is also where Australia sends out professionals to the region. So to have all those 3 groups together, that was a great networking event. A lot of like-minded people who had who were able to share their experience in the region. Tips for applying. The application process, like Alice said, it can be long, but if you do it just step by step, it's not too bad. It's not as daunting as it may seem. I guess at this stage, you might not know too much about what the New Colombo Plan is. So yeah, really get familiarizing yourself with the guidelines of the New Colombo Plan so that you can address each criteria carefully. Is important. So each of those 4 kind of key criteria. Don't underestimate that last one about your ability to contribute towards the NCP goals and objectives, and you'll really be able to do that well if you have a good understanding of the guidelines. So communicating that in the application is pretty important. Treat it the same as applying for your job. I have be your authentic self there. The NCP just more so that's going to be more important in the interview, but it does come through your written responses as well. Demonstrate that you're open-minded, curious, and willing to challenge yourself. I guess that comes down to the adaptability and resilience criteria. There are a lot of challenges that can come up when you study abroad, even probably more so now in a COVID world, post-COVID world with travel. So the NCP really want to know that you are adaptable and resilient, which I'm sure all of you are. So that should be okay. And focus on demonstrating your potential as well, which will come through your responses. So good luck as you're starting your New Colombo Plan application process and trying to get those nomination forms in. Alice does a great job at supporting people applying, students applying. So yeah, I was very fortunate throughout my application process to have Alice and Charles Sturt really support me. You've got the Career Development Office too, which provided me with some help with interviews leading up to interview practice and preparation leading up to interviews. And yeah, just any responses that you want checked before you submit your application form. When you get to that stage, Alice is great to help there. So, and also me, I'm here to help as well. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out for help. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you, Dylan. That was really good. So yeah, I hope you all found that really helpful. Nat's put some questions in, so that's really great. I thought, Nat, your questions related to the application form. So I do just have a draft copy of what our nomination form will look like. So I'll just see if I can share that on the screen for you as well. Should be able to make that bigger for you. So I think you can all see that Word document there. Yeah?
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, the first page is just normal, everyday information, so nothing too tricky there. If you know where you want to study once you put your nomination in, that's great. That gives us a starting point to start looking at host locations for you. If you already know what university overseas you want to study at, that takes us even one step further, but you don't have to know the university, but just knowing what country you'd like to study in is fantastic, and we will need to do that. Have you had a police check, yes or no? It needs to be quite a recent check, so just bear that in mind as well. If you do need to get a new police check, we will reimburse you for that cost as well. So we understand that we don't, not all students have lots of access to lots of money, so that if you are out of pocket, we don't want that to happen. So we reimburse you for that. So essentially, yeah, 300 words per question, Nat, was your one of your questions. So it gives you a little bit of an indication here in more detail about what they're asking for in that question. And then we give you some tips about what other applicants have used, so that will help you make your application a little bit stronger. So there's just questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's all that's required in the first stage of the application process. So hopefully that takes a little bit of the scariness out of it for you. If you want feedback on this first part, I would recommend that you share it with people that you know. So it can be other students, can be significant other, can be parents, just because sometimes people will know you sometimes a little bit, or they have a different insight to you that others that you have yourself. So they might say, oh, but you forgot to put in, that you got this award, or you work with those people in the community. So don't be shy of sharing this with other people and asking for their help. Just at this initial stage, it's just Charles Sturt Global can't give you too much help. But as Dylan said, he's here and happy to help. We also have other scholars that are happy to help as well. They've unfortunately, the recent scholars haven't had the opportunity to do the study component because COVID put a stop to all of that, but they're more than happy to help you through the application process and help sort of calm your nerves about that a little bit as well, we hope. Yeah, other part of your question, that was in regard to the full-time study. You do have to study full-time for the study period overseas. So what that means is if you go away in session 2 next year, you will need to be a full-time student at your host university, or a combination of your host university and Charles Sturt during that time. So by that, I mean students who study full-time at Charles Sturt University normally study 32 points, or that's equivalent to 4 8-point subjects. If you have a subject at CSU that you can't study overseas, that is a core component of your course and is available online, you can study that at Charles Sturt University while at the same time studying 3 other subjects at your host university. So as long as you're studying full-time, then that meets the requirements of the scholarship program. So I hope that clears that up for you, Nat, but feel free to come off mute if you if you need more clarity. Or Mitch or Brett, if you've got some more questions, happy for everyone to put them in the chat or unmute yourselves and have a go. And we're not going to do a word count on on the nomination form. If you put in 250 words and you feel that you've answered the question to the best of your ability, then that's great. If you put in 100 words and you haven't really answered the question in as much detail as possible, then it wouldn't be as competitive as someone who has put the word limit up for themselves. So just bear that in mind as well. We're not going to be super strict on it as long as we can feel that you've adequately addressed the questions. When it comes to the application form, the NCP online application, they are stricter about that word count. So it'll automatically cut off, so it won't let you go over, whereas we won't worry too much. As long as you're not giving us 1,000 words for each answer, that makes it a bit hard to assess when you've got multiple nominations coming in. Now, also, you've got, thank you, Alice. Does DFAT also prefer you only travel to one country on NCP to become an ambassador to really build strong connections with that country? No, they want you to study in one location. They don't want you to, some students like to study in 2 locations. They don't really like you to do that because you don't really get as much of an immersive experience. They want you to try and immerse yourself as much as you can. But no, you can, as Dylan said, you can go and intern in another country and study in your primary location and intern in your second location. I get your point about being a really strong ambassador with links to country if you're just in one, but they also want a broad reach in the Indo Pacific as well. So it won't impede your application if you want to travel to 2 locations.
Yeah, I'll just add that, yeah, NCP, they tend to look more favorable on programs that are more longer, perhaps. So maybe, yeah, rather than just doing a full study component and no internships, if you did a full study component and then an internship, they see that as more favorable because they really want scholars to make the most of their NCP experience.
And likewise for the language tuition as well. You don't have to do language tuition, and some students can't do language tuition in country. So for example, the same year that Dylan went away, we had a student who went and studied in Bhutan, and unfortunately there's no registered training academy for language studies in Bhutan, so she was unable to undertake that component, but she certainly did the study component and the internship component as well. So as long as you are showing that as much as you can, you want to get as much as you can out of the internship, it'll be favourable for you.
Did you find, Dylan, that the language barrier caused much of an issue, or was there much of a language barrier at all? Or?
Learning language definitely does help. That's why the NCP does have the language tuition to help you really immerse yourself when you go to a host location. But otherwise, NCP expects that you'll be studying in English anyway. So you won't really, not required to learn a new language. And going to Papua New Guinea and both Solomon Islands, at the university, they were taught in English. Everything was English in the internship as well, mostly English. But yeah, you do get the local languages in like casual conversation, for example, with your classmates. If you're out and about, they'll prefer to speak their languages. So being able to learn language, even just the basics, allows you to be a bit more approachable and to build some stronger connections. But it's not something that I would say that I would have needed to do to get through my program, but it certainly helped me have a better experience.
Do you still use it, Dylan? You still speak?
Yeah, I'm still practicing. I still talk to my friends that I made back in PNG and Solomons, in Tokpisin, which is a language I learnt. And I was kind of, I guess, in a similar situation to like Bhutan or some countries that don't have language providers. NCP were pretty flexible, and I was allowed to arrange for one-on-one tutor with an academic at the PNG at the University of Technology. So we just did, say, I think we had 1 or 2 lessons a week over a 6-week period, where I would learn Tokkisin. And then I just learned a lot through my friends, like in informal conversation and things like that. You'd pick up things. Before I went on my program, I did a bit of online kind of like independent, like investigating and learning and things like that. So I could know, how to say hello and things like that, the basics, which was helpful.
Yeah, and there's, when you're speaking of online, things like Babbel and Duolingo will certainly not harm you at all if you're making an effort. That's always good. It can help your application if you say, look, I'm already practicing and learning what I can while I'm at home, so that I'm going to be more prepared when I go away. So I guess if you show a passion and you show a willingness to learn, that all comes out in your application, and it shows, as Dylan said, really good expression of showing your authentic self. They want to know the people that are going away. They don't want to just see a transcript. They want to know about you and see that you're going to make the most of the opportunity with passion and gusto.
Just another one, Dylan, too. I'm doing ag science as well. I got a couple of mates who are doing ag science. How did you go about actually choosing what countries like you'd consider, sort of like which one you get the most out of for your course?
Yeah, great question, Mitchell. Yeah, so when I was applying for the New Colombo Plan, that's a big thing you have to kind of decide is what country am I going to go to? What university am I going to go to? What works best for me and what can just work for my degree. So at that stage, I'd recommend reaching out to your course director, just having a conversation about like, hey, I'm thinking of applying for the New Colombo Plan Scholarship. How can it work for me? That's what I did. And then I got pointed in the direction of a couple of lecturers who have went to Papua New Guinea in the years leading up to my program. As part of the New Colombo Plan mobility stream, which is separate to the scholarship program. There's also a mobility program, which sends is a short-term study tours and that, where groups tend to go out. Sturt University had some groups go to PNG. So there's kind of links established between Sturt University and the Papua New Guinea University of Technology, which was really good. And then when, because I was doing my honours, I had to kind of think about how that was going to work. And just through talking to lecturers and people at Sturt, I was able to find a real good synergy between Sturt and the university I was going to. Sturt Academic was actually leading a research project over in PNG. So I just tapped into that project, and so my project was on sweet potatoes, looking at protecting biological control of pests to sweet potatoes. So that was something I wouldn't have even thought about doing before I applied for New Colombo Plan. So it's just having those conversations early with people who are around you who can support you as well. Yeah. Alice knows of some universities and things, which have relationships and can point you in the right direction.
And Mitchell, it's thinking about, do you have or have you had a historical connection with a particular country or region? Have you holidayed there? Do you have family connections? Even looking at internships, is there an organisation or a business that you'd really like to get some experiences with? Have they got a head office in a particular country or city? Those sorts of things to think about, but especially, where can you see yourself living for 6 to possibly 18 months while you're overseas? What do you want to personally get out of the experience as well? So it can come down to, you might also play a sport which is really highly regarded in that particular country. Are they, do they, excelling in a particular sport, or lots of different ways that you can approach it. So it's a very individual thing, but yeah, sure, reach out to me, other academics, because our academics are sort of working in research areas all around the world. So if they don't have a connection, they might have a connection with someone else, but it's often good to have sort of a starting point with them so that you're not putting all the work on them to find you a host. It's got to come from what you have a passion for, because that comes through to the panel when they're interviewing you and talking to you.
Yeah, really just reflect on what your passions are and what areas of interest. In my second year of my degree, I did an international experience to Hawaii. So that was in the Pacific, and I really got interested in Pacific agriculture and things like that. So a Pacific country, for example, was somewhere I wanted to go. And then from there, I just deducted to Papua New Guinea and everything worked. So that was where I ended up. And I was very curious about PNG as well, all the cultures and languages. And I really wanted to experience the place for myself. So yeah, there's a whole lot of factors that can come into it, but just reflecting on what interests you and things like that is important.
I have a question as well. So just to confirm, you can do the language study, you're like a secondary location, not necessarily a primary one?
Your language study has to be in the location where you're going to be studying.
Oh, okay. So it has to be your private. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is, like for me personally, I have like an idea of a country I want to go to. For like, I want to intern at some businesses there, and I know they've got university which does what I want to study really well. But if I was thinking of, say, I'm thinking of maybe 2 locations, and I was wondering if I could kind of choose my primary location as a location that more aligns with my like career and study goals and has that the course that I want to do and the businesses that I want to intern with, the language. And then could I choose like maybe a secondary location where I have like a particular cultural interest in?
Short answer is yes. The long answer is yeah, it's a tricky one because it's, I guess, the location where you're going to be able to make the most of the experience. So I guess that's a bit of a tricky one to answer for you. Now, I would say option 1 sounds better to me in that you're going to get more out of it. Career-wise, internship-wise, it could really lead to some major things for you after the program. But yeah, it's we might speak about that later on if you want to have another catch-up meeting at some other time. But
Sure.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to sort of know which is going to fly better with the NCP panel, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know that I probably answered that as much as you wanted.
No worries, thank you.
Yeah. I was just going to say as well, it can be sounding daunting about choosing a location, choosing a university, choosing an intern host. As I sort of briefly touched on, you don't need to know all that now, and it could change along the way as well. And I think even with the application process, I think last year you were able to nominate a second location. So what the NCP are looking or asking those questions for is because they have a limited number of places that they can consider students for in each country. So when they're looking at the applications as they come in, they might say they have, 200 applicants who are saying they want to study in Japan, but they know that they're only going to have 10 places available. So it gives them an idea when they're ranking and looking at the applications as they're coming in as to how many they will realistically be able to place at those locations. But in terms of the internship, you don't have to say, I want to go and work with a media organisation in this particular country, but you can say, I want to go and work in media. I've got an interest in public relations, so it would be great to go and work with this because it meets my objectives career-wise, but will help me strengthen ties and build up connections within the NCP. So then that helps you link back to the objective. So you can tell them like the plan, like what you would like to get out of it, without identifying specific places and people.
Sure, thank you.
Just a quick question. Like I mentioned right at the start, so I only just completed my first year of online part-time for the course. So I technically have another 5 years of my course left. Do you recommend applying now, or maybe getting a bit further into the course, get a better understanding of the degree and the type of study that we're doing, like what we're studying, before applying for this?
I'd if it's something that you think you'd like to see yourself doing next year, then definitely I would say apply. I know I have been working with the student for over 12 months now. They were at your stage last year, and they were looking at their progress in their course and what they had coming up, and they ended up deciding that last year wasn't the right time for them. They're going to apply this year. But there's also nothing to stop students from applying years after year. So if you were applying this year, you can either pull yourself out at any stage. You don't have to continue with the application process, although we'd really like people to continue, because it's therefore not taking the place of somebody else. But if something came up and you had to withdraw, then you can do that. But also, if you weren't successful, you can apply for another year down the track as well. So I certainly wouldn't rule yourself out at this early stage. Put your nomination form in, and certainly take that time while you're waiting for it to be assessed to think about it. Maybe have a meeting with your course director and talk about the course and where you're going with it and what's coming up. And they might say, look, second year is the best time to go on exchange because you've got these more generic subjects. They might say that you've got more flexibility, whereas third year you might have a work placement coming up that you really have to do in Australia. So they might have some constructive feedback about when's the best time for you to go as well. But there's certainly nothing in the guidelines that exclude applicants from applying year on year if they weren't successful in their first year, their first application.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
How many people? Oh, sorry, Alice.
No, I was going to say. Sorry, you keep going.
You go.
You go.
Oh. How many people will you actually take from CSU? Because you take it from all different unis, don't you?
That's right. So every university, I think there's 40 universities in Australia, will be allowed to nominate up to 10 students. So if we get 20 nominations, we'll have to cull those back and nominate up to 10. That's not necessarily saying that we will put forward 10. We put forward applications that we feel are strong enough to move through each stage of the application process. But ideally, we'd love to put forward 10 students. That's the maximum allowance we are given.
But those 10 students aren't necessarily going to get the scholarship?
That's right. No, they're going in then to compete against students from other universities. So the nomination stage, this first form that you fill out, is you basically competing against every other CSU student for one of those 10 places. And then when you go to the online application form, there's up to 10 students from every university in Australia competing against each other. Sounds like the Hunger Games or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sure is. So how many do they take in the end? Is it a fixed number?
I think it's around about 140, 150 each year. Would that be right?
I think it's been for my cohort, it was 125 around. It's like it started with like around 100, but it's been going up incrementally, it appears to.
Yep.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I think it might have gone up since my cohort, but 125 for my year, 2019. Yeah.
Don't be put off by
to the interview.
Yeah. Mitchell, don't be put off by other people applying, because if you don't apply, you can never get to the next stage. So putting in your nomination, it puts it on us to see and make that decision. If you don't get further through, there's certainly no shame in that. I mean, the applications that we see are always year on year. They're really strong. They're really competitive. Last year, I think we put forward 10 students, 7 went to interview, 2 were awarded the scholarship. The year before that, I think again we put put forward 7 students. 5 or 6 went to interview, 3 were awarded the scholarship. So we know you're in a great cohort of students who are as equally deserving of the scholarship as any student from any other university. So don't think about that side of it. Just put forward the best application that you can, and then we'll work with you to keep making it stronger if we feel that it's strong enough in its initial form to go forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice.
That's okay. And I guess the part about the application is that they really want to get to know you as a person. As I said earlier, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, they can look at a transcript and they can see that there's a student who's a high distinction student and they've won all these sorts of awards. That's great. But if they don't have the personality, the resilience, the aptitude to go on and really put themselves out there, they're not going to succeed. So it's not just one criteria alone that's going to choose a student. It's going to be the combination of the whole. So you might feel that you're a little bit weaker in one area, but you really might stand out in another area. So that's what people worry about sometimes. They go, oh, well, my GPA is 5.5, but I know there's people with a GPA of 6. In the end, it all evens out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we've just gone over the hour. I've got more time. I'm not rushing off, but I know especially you students, you've got exams and final assessments coming up. So I don't want to keep you away from them, but I can stay online if you've got more questions. I don't know if Dylan has another room to go to since he can't go out of the house.
Yeah, might go to the kitchen. Yeah, thanks everyone. And just know that it's achievement in itself to be eligible to apply for a new Colombo Plan Scholarship and apply for the nomination, because you have those grades and that. So just really back yourself. And the best of luck. And I'm sure you all do great if you decide to apply, which I'd highly recommend.
All right. Well, I think we might finish, or at least stop the recording.